Hello everybody and welcome back to another video here on my channel. Today we are of course going over my February TBR. What I have picked for my TBR, I have about 6 books, but they're not necessarily picked because of prompts or because I had my son pick one or my blind dog pick a book. I just actually wanted to mood read this month and kind of finish a little bit of series that I'm in the middle of. Not too many because I usually finish my series. When I start them, I don't stop until I go all the way through, but I've kind of broken up 2 different series so far, so I kind of want to finish those. And I want to stick to mood reading just because in December and a little bit of last month, or technically we're still in January, but it's the 31st today as I'm filming this, in a little bit of January and then also for December, I was in a slump and I did a 24-hour reading challenge to kind of help pull me out of my slump, and it did work and I got to read some really good books. I feel like I really read more books after that challenge and once I started kind of mood reading a little bit, so I want to continue that with next month. And also I'm trying to kind of tackle my TBR, my physical TBR. I have just under, especially now after I've read 10 books pretty much, I think I have under 50 books now that I have to read. It's not much, so I'd like to continue that, and I know I'm gonna buy a few more for February because I already talked to my husband because of a book club that I'm kind of in for our community where we live. And then also I just want another book to complete a trilogy, so those are future plans for buying books. But otherwise I just kind of want to tackle my physical TBR just a little bit more. Since I've already talked so much, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into February's TBR. The first book that I have on this TBR is one that I might end up finishing today, and then if so, I'll just include it into my January wrap-up since, like I said, it is the 31st. It's only 120 pages long. It's a novella. It is Maybe Not by Colleen Hoover. I just finished Maybe Someday yesterday, and I kind of, since I had this one, I just wanted to go ahead and read it, especially since it's 120. I do want to buy the third one. I'm not 100% sure what the third one's about because I thought this was continuing potentially Maybe Someday, but now I think this is between 2 different characters inside because so far it is about those 2 different characters. I have planned to read it today and finish it today, but if I don't, then I will definitely finish it in February. So it is going on this list, but it also might go into my wrap-up. Keep that in mind. I guess I'll pile my books there. Second, I have the third book in the Beautiful Creatures series. This is Beautiful Chaos. I just finished the second book a few days ago. I do believe like 2, and I kind of took a break. I read Maybe Someday just kind of as a palate cleanser, I think is what most people call it. I just wanted something that was literally no brain power and I could fly through, and just also because I was filming a video that will probably be posted after this video. But I just didn't want to continue the series because I kind of felt bad that the book prior to this just took up a lot of that video. So I wanted to just a little change in genre also for my video itself. So this is the third book, YA and fantasy. It's basically about this boy who always lived in a small town called Gatlin in South Carolina, and he grew up there. He lives in his family's plantation house. A lot of the town was actually burnt down during the Civil War and only 2 buildings existed or like still stood. One got turned into a museum and then the other one is an old plantation house. It's the oldest building in the city, and of course since it survived the fire, a lot of people kind of avoid it. It's kind of like that haunted house vibes. And also there's this uncle who lives there and he hasn't been seen in 20-30 years. They don't even know if he's fully alive. They just know that he lives there and everybody's afraid of him. He's kind of like that talk of the town because he's completely different. The whole town, since it's a small town, judges anybody who comes in, and his niece ends up coming in, and the main character, and technically she's the second main character, but it's only in the boy's point of view. She comes in and they instantly connect somehow, like magically, and it's just a fun little YA fantasy that I don't have to put too much brain power in, but there is a little bit of world building. It's not world building, it's more so like describing the characters because there's different creatures. They're not like vampires, but there's different names for certain characters and what they are. The whole world pretty much, it's the caster world and then you have the mortal world. It's kind of interesting to see how the 2 kind of combine. And also I like, for the most part, there's a few things about, since both of these characters lived and grew up in California, I don't really agree with how they write about the South since they aren't from the South. There's only a few little things that kind of bother me, and it's just how a lot of people view the South. They just have one opinion of the South. Otherwise, I have been enjoying the whole series. I actually rated both books 4 stars, but the last book, the second book, was more of a 4-star than the first book. I felt like there was just so much more that went on, and I kind of like all the things that were thrown at you and the curveballs, and especially like the ending. I kind of felt uneasy about the ending, but there's a part of me that loved it. So going into this book, I'm excited to see how it all plays out. And of course, we have one more book called Beautiful Redemption after this one. So this is really high on my TBR list. I will probably honestly start this after I finish Maybe Not. Then I have All the Light That We Cannot See by Anthony Dewar. This I've seen popping up more here recently on BookTube a lot, and I'm kind of intrigued into this book. I picked it up at a thrift store because I kind of seen it off and on throughout the years, and then I just thought it was like a really pretty cover for the most part. So I did pick it up, and it turns out, since I never read what it was about and I never really heard anybody talk about it, I just recently found out that it's actually during the war. It's set in like Paris time frame, and I'm kind of interested about that. The last book that I read that had to revolve around the war and Nazis and in Paris was Sarah's Key by Tatiana de Rosnay, and I enjoyed that book a lot. That was one of my 5 stars from a few years ago. It had a good message to it when it talked about like the war message. It had a really good message to it. I didn't really care for the now timeline that I do believe her name was Julia, which was kind of ironic, but I hated that timeline. But the original timeline about the war, everything like that was really interesting, and I'm kind of intrigued to kind of step back into that history if this follows more to date. Hopefully, I do believe it would follow more so to date because I think this is like a historical fiction. So this is another really anticipated read that I'm hoping to get to in February and not push it back until another month. Then I have 28 Summers by Ellen Hilderbrand. I'm trying really hard. I find it very hard to read her books. I've already wanting to get rid of 2 books for my free little library video. I've only liked The Hotel Nantucket. I read The Identicals and also A Summer Affair by her, and I did not like those 2 books. I kind of rated, I do believe The Identicals 4 stars, but the other book I think I rated like 2 stars, maybe 3 stars. I don't really like as much of her writing as I thought I did when I read Hotel Nantucket. It was the first book I read from her. I just kind of went and thrifted a bunch of her books when I would see them, and now I have, I do believe, 5 or 6 that I have to read, and I feel like her books are more so the ones that would be nice to give out in free little libraries because I don't think I would enjoy a lot of them. This book I did try and start, and I softy enoughed it, I think in 2023, it might have been 2022, and it was because in the very first, I think like either prologue or the first chapter, she talks about COVID. I didn't care about that. I hated that time frame because I hated how easily manipulated everybody in this country was, and I just really didn't feel like revisiting that, so I put it off, and I'm circling back to it now to see. I kind of just want to get it off my shelf along with some of her other books that I have, and I feel like now's the time that I'm trying to cut back on my physical TBR, so I need to read some of the books that don't necessarily excite me to read but are more so sitting on my shelf. I don't want them to sit any longer, and if I'm not going to read them, I need to get rid of them. That's my thinking, so I wanted to try and read again 28 Summers. If I have to DNF this book and get rid of it, then I will, but I want to at least try and give it 50 to 100 pages before I potentially DNF it. Then I have Girl in Pieces, and since I thrifted this, I don't have the dust jacket, but I've seen a few people read this a year ago, maybe a little bit more, and I honestly feel like I don't try to reach for it because it doesn't have the dust jacket. It's just kind of sitting on my shelf. I feel like I need to read it so that I know if it's good or not, and then that way also I can stop looking at it and thinking how I never look for it or I never reach for it because I just don't ever think about the book because all I ever see is this. Hopefully I can get to this and read this as well. The last book that I have on my TBR is Pearl Harbor's Final Warning, and this book I recently just picked up at the Airman's Attic on base. I love military style books, and every once in a while I just like to pick up more so the memoirs or even just like the non-fiction books for history. I enjoy reading about especially America's history and certain things that happen. So I seen this and I kind of like the feeling of this book because it's kind of like one of those books that somebody just got published. It's one of their first published books or one of their second published books. The pages are like super white, but the spacing, the font size, everything about this book for whatever reason just feels good in my hand, and I do like reading these types of books. I was kind of intrigued also because it talks about a man, a message, and a paradise lost. It says a true story about the message that arrived too late, and I don't know what in particular the message is because I haven't read the back of this book. I just read what the front cover says, so I'm very intrigued to actually see if it's a message that I actually know about or if it's something more deep, like more personal in somebody's life during Pearl Harbor. So this is just a fun little read for me that I wanted to throw on this month's TBR. Here are all 6 books that I have on February's TBR. I'm actually excited about this TBR. I feel like I'm going to at least read half of it. I'm hoping to get through half and also pick up a few books for February itself that aren't going to be on this list. I am excited to see which one of these I do end up picking up and finally getting off my physical TBR. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you guys all enjoyed my little TBR that I had already picked out and set aside for this video. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and even subscribe. Stay in touch with my channel. I enjoy watching it grow. More so, I enjoy the comments when somebody is telling me how much I've helped them find a new book recommendation. I really enjoy those little helpful comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see y'all in another video here on my channel. God bless.